The year was 1607, when famine gripped many lands of Eastern Europe like a merciless fist. In a small border village where Lithuanian marshes met Russian forests, life was measured not by calendars, but by the turning of seasons and the phases of the moon. The people here believed themselves to be watched, not by saints alone, but by older, darker powers, whose roots reached deeper than the oaks and pines that ringed their homes. Each full moon in November was sacred, dreaded and revered all at once. On that night, the villagers would lay their offerings on crude wooden altars just beyond the plowed fields, sheaves of wheat, loaves of black bread, garlands of wildflowers long dried by summer's heat. They whispered prayers not to Christ, but to a figure older and feared Baba Yaga, the witch of the forest. God, it was said she flew in a mortar, wielding a pestle as her oar, her hut wandering on chicken legs, never still for long. To most, she was terror incarnate. To others, a goddess of cycles, death, and rebirth, who guarded the balance of harvest. One year, she would bless them with overflowing barns. Another, she might steal away children in the night. But to Ivan, the youngest, son of a farmer, such tales were little more than rustic fear. Ivan was 19, sharp-eyed and restless, his head filled not with legends, but with the writings of wandering scholars who spoke of reason, of nature's laws, of science rising in distant lands. His mother called him a blasphemer for scoffing at the rituals. His father scolded him for refusing to bow his head during prayers to the forest witch. Superstition breeds weakness. Ivan muttered one evening as he watched his elder brother lay down a bundle of rye at the altar. The moon, still days from its fullness, peeked like a pale coin between the clouds. If famine has struck us, it is not because of witches. It is because the rains failed, because the earth is tired, because we have tilled too much. His brother, Pavel, spat in the dirt. Say that aloud when the forest listens, and see if your tongue is not stolen before morning. Despite his disdain, Ivan felt the same hunger gnawing in his belly that afflicted the others. That autumn had yielded little more than withered stalks and blighted barley. The storehouses stood half empty. Already whispers spread that this year's feast might not be enough to appease Baba Yaga. The elders said she punished pride. The children said she came at night to drink their dreams. And even though he declared himself above such nonsense found, his sleep haunted with whispers he could not name. On the eve of the November full moon, Ivan decided he would prove them all wrong. While the villagers prepared their offerings baking coarse loaves, weaving straw dolls, and stringing corn husks into wreaths, he slipped from the cottages with nothing but a lantern and a knife at his belt. His breath fogged in the night. Air sharp with frost. The forest loomed ahead, a black wall of pines and birches, their branches clawing at the star-pocked sky. A wolf howled in the distance, and he felt the villagers' fear pressing against him like unseen hands. Still, he pressed on. If Baba Yaga is real, he muttered, then let me find her. If not, I will return at dawn and show them the forest. Hides only wind and beasts. The deeper he went, the stranger the air became. The lantern's flame guttered, though no breeze stirred. Frost glittered on the ground in strange, spiraling patterns, like runes etched by an unseen hand. Once, he thought he heard laughter thin, sharp, echoing between the trees. Ivan tightened his grip on the lantern. Tricks of the wind, he told himself. After an hour's walk, he came upon something that stilled his breath. A great oak, older than any he had seen, its trunk wide as a cottage, its bark carved with symbols he did not know. Circles within circles, spirals, figures with outstretched arms. Beneath its roots lay bones animal, perhaps, but arranged in deliberate patterns, as if forming a crude altar. The flame flickered, and shadows lengthened across the clearing. For the first time, Ivan felt a twinge of unease crawl down his spine. Dares tread in my garden? The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Raspy, like dead leaves crushed underfoot, yet strong enough to make the ground tremble. Even whirled, but saw only trees and shadows. His mouth went dry. I am no thief. I only walk. The silence that followed pressed upon him until his heart pounded like a drum. Then faintly came the sound of creaking wood. He turned. There, between the trees, loomed a hut that it should not have been possible. He had walked here before in daylight, and no such dwelling stood. But now, under the near full moon, a crooked cottage squatted on legs like those of a giant bird, clawed and scaled. They shifted, scraping the earth as though restless. The hut itself sagged, its thatched roof patched with moss, its windows, glowing faintly red as though lit by embers, even froze. Breath caught in his chest dot, so the old tailies were not merely tailies. The hut leaned forward, creaking as if regarding him with curiosity. Then it shifted, turning on its monstrous legs until the door faced him directly. His instincts screamed to flee, and yet his scholar's pride, his hunger for proof, anchored his feet. If he returned to the village empty-handed, they would laugh at his cowardice. But if he brought back a tale of seeing Baba Yaga's very dwelling, lantern trembling in his grasp, even took a single step closer. The hut shuddered, then still dot, and from within came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. Door creaked open. A hand appeared, first gnarled, long-fingered, nails blackened as if dipped in soot. Then a figure emerged, tall, thin, draped in ragged garments of gray and black. Her hair, white as frost, fell in tangled ropes to her waist. Her eyes, sunken yet burning with unnatural light, fixed upon him. "Little crow," she rasped, voice curling like smoke. "What brings you here when others kneel at their hearths?" Ivan's tongue clove to the roof of his mouth. Every story, every warning he had scorned now loomed before him in flesh. I seek truth," he managed, though his voice shook. A smile split her face crooked, sharp, more terrifying than any snarl. "Truth," Baba Yaga said. "Then enter, and let the forest whisper what truth it knows." Behind her, the huts. Interior glowed with firelight, flickering shadows that danced like living things. The smell of herbs, blood, and smoke drifted out to meet him. Ivan hesitated on the threshold between choice and doom, and the forest waited, silent, as though holding its breath. The village stirred long before sunset, the air sharp with frost and smoke from hearths lit against the cold. On this night, the full moon of November, none dared linger indoors. Each family gathered their meager stores, clutching what little they had left from a blighted harvest. Wreaths of dried corn husks, bundles of barley, rye bread hard as stone, jars of honey scraped from nearly empty combs. These offerings were carried to the edge of the fields, where a crooked wooden altar stood beneath the skeletal branches of an ash tree. It was Baba Yaga's night, and the people knew hunger was not the only danger she might bring. Ivan returned from the forest only an hour before the rites began. His face was pale, his lantern blackened from where it had guttered out in the witch's clearing. He told no one what he had seen. His father noticed his silence and muttered a prayer, thinking it the quiet of repentance. His brother Pavel clasped his shoulder and said, "Best not to speak. The forest hears enough already." When the moon rose, huge and swollen, it seemed to stain the frost-silvered fields with a pale, otherworldly glow. Villagers arranged their offerings upon the altar, bowing their heads as they murmured invocations, half in prayer, half in fear. Mothers pressed kisses to their children's brows, begging the witch to leave them untouched. Ivan stood apart, arms folded, his breath clouding in the bitter air. He wanted to laugh at the spectacle, to scorn their trembling, but the memory of the hut on its monstrous legs still clung to him. The figure in the doorway, those burning eyes, that rasping voice. No book of reason had prepared him for that. Sight. The headman raised a gnarled hand, signaling silence. "We give thanks to Baba Yaga, keeper of cycles," he intoned. "We offer our bread and grain, our wreaths and flowers, in hope that she will turn her face kindly toward us. May our fields be sown in spring, and our children's bellies full." As the final words left his lips, a wind rose, though the night was still, not a leaf stirring. The altar shuddered, the offerings shifting as though unseen hands touched them. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the bread crumbled to dust, the jars cracked, the corn husks blackened into ash. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "She has taken them," whispered Pavel, eyes wide. "She is here." But Ivan's gaze was fixed not on the altar, but on the field beyond. There, where the moonlight lay thick as milk, a shadow lengthened, tall, hunched, grotesque in form. It moved against the wind, against the light itself, and every step made the earth seem to groan. He blinked, and it was gone. The villagers murmured prayers, some kneeling, some weeping in relief. But Ivan could not shake what he had seen. When the crowd dispersed, retreating to their cottages to seal windows and bar doors, he slipped away, his heart thundering. He followed the shadow's trail through frost and field, through thickets, where the moon's light dared not pierce, until he found himself once more at the edge of the ancient forest. There between the trees, the glow of fire beckoned. The hut on chicken legs stood waiting. It shifted restlessly, claws digging into the frozen soil, as though eager for his return. Smoke coiled from its crooked chimney, carrying with it the scent of roasting flesh and bitter herbs. Ivan crept closer, every nerve screaming at him to flee. Yet curiosity, that most dangerous hunger, pulled him onward. He pressed himself against the trunk of an elm, peering through a crack in the warped shutters. What he saw made his stomach twist. Inside, a table stretched across the crooked room, laden with food that was no food at all. Loaves of bread bled thick red ichor when torn. Bowls brimmed with bones that rattled like dry seeds. A roasted goose twitched as though still alive, its eye rolling in its skull. Fruits gleamed with rot, their skins bursting to reveal crawling. Worms. At the head of the table sat Baba Yaga herself, gaunt and towering, her hair spilling like smoke, her eyes two coals in a face carved of shadow. She feasted, gnawing bones with teeth that gleamed like iron. Each bite sent shivers through the air, as though the forest itself echoed her hunger. But she was not alone. Shadows sat with her, no bodies, no flesh, only outlines of men and women, children and elders, their forms wavering like smoke. They mimicked the act of eating, though their mouths never touched the food. With every motion, they seemed to shrink, fading, as if their very essence was being devoured. Ivan realized with horror what they were. The villagers' dreams, their hopes, their youth, their vitality harvested and set before Baba Yaga's feast. He stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. A branch snapped under his boot. Silence. The shadows inside froze. Baba Yaga's head lifted slowly, her nostrils flaring as though scenting the night. "Little crow," she rasped, her voice slithering through the cracks like smoke. "Still you follow." Ivan spun to flee, but the door of the hut creaked open with unnatural speed. The chicken legs bent low, claws digging deep, bringing the crooked threshold down before him. The witch stood framed in firelight, her crooked staff clutched in one hand, her other reaching toward him with fingers long enough to scratch the stars. "You mock the old ways," she said, her smile crooked and terrible. "And yet hunger drives you here. Tell me, what is it you seek? Truth or power?" Ivan's breath came fast. Every story, every warning whispered by the villagers, Every prayer mocked in his youth now stood before him, terrible and undeniable. I want to know why," he stammered. "Why you take from us. Why the harvest fails." The witch's laughter was a sound like bones rattling in a grave. "Because the cycle turns, little crow. Because nothing is free. You sow, you reap. You feast, you starve. You live, you die. All is mine to turn as I please." Her shadow stretched over him, vast and suffocating. "But now," she said, eyes burning like twin embers, "your village owes me more than bread and corn. They have given me their dreams, their youth, their future, and only you may bargain for its return." Ivan's knees trembled, but he forced himself to stand firm. "What must I do?" Baba Yaga leaned close, her breath sharp with smoke and rot. "Bring me the hourglass of bone. It lies in the cave of shattered time, guarded by the wolves of shadow. Return it to me before the next moon wanes, and I will restore what I have taken. Fail, and your people will wither to husks before spring." She drew back, and the hut groaned, its legs rising, shifting, restless. The shadows at the table moaned in unison, their voices hollow as wind through a crypt. "Choose, little crow," Baba Yaga whispered. "Truth or power, despair or bargain." And with that, the door slammed shut, the firelight vanishing, leaving Ivan trembling in the cold moonlight. He staggered back, heart pounding, the witch's words echoing in his skull. The fate of the village rested not in prayers or offerings, but in his hands. Equals, the following dawn broke gray and bitter, the frost lying thick upon the village roofs like a funeral shroud. Smoke from the hearths curled reluctantly, as if even fire wished to hide from the cold. The villagers moved like shadows themselves, silent, hollow-eyed, drained of strength. Even felt their stares follow him as he walked the muddy paths between cottages. He knew they sensed it, though none spoke of it aloud. Something had been taken from them. Children stared blankly, listless where once they had laughed. The old slumped as though their bones had grown heavier overnight. Even the cattle lowed. Weakly, as if robbed of spirit, his brother caught him by the sleeve. "Ivan, you were gone last night. Where did you go?" "I went where none should go," Ivan whispered. His lips were cracked, his voice hoarse. "And I returned with knowledge none should bear." Pavel's eyes widened in fear. He shook his head. "Say no more. To speak of her is to call her closer." But Ivan could not keep silent. "If we do nothing, we starve. Baba Yaga has taken our dreams. She has demanded a price for their return." His brother paled, and for a moment looked older than their father. "What price?" Ivan hesitated. How could he describe the bone hourglass, the cave of shattered time, the wolves of shadow? He settled for a half-truth. "She demands a relic from the forest. If I bring it to her, she will restore what she has taken." "And if you fail?" Pavel asked. Ivan did not answer. That evening, as the sun sank and the moon rose fat and pale, Ivan prepared to depart. He carried a lantern, flint, and steel, a loaf of black bread, a knife honed as sharp as he could make it. Around his neck he wore a simple charm of wood his mother had pressed into his palm, though he had once mocked such things. Now he clutched it with trembling fingers. The villagers watched him go, but said nothing. Some crossed themselves, others spat into the dirt to ward off evil. None offered to follow. His path was his alone. The forest swallowed him swiftly, its trees like black pillars, its silence broken only by the crunch of frost beneath his boots. Yet the deeper he went, the stranger the air grew. Time itself seemed to thicken, each step drawn out as though he waded through water. His breath echoed unnaturally, bouncing back at him like whispers. At last, after what might have been hours or days, he could no longer tell, he reached a clearing where stone teeth jutted from the earth. jagged and pale as bones. In there, midst yawned a cave, its mouth dark as an open grave. Symbols older than memory were carved above the entrance, glowing faintly as though lit from within. The cave of shattered time. Even drew a shaking breath and entered Dot inside. The air was heavy, with the scent of earth and decay. The walls glittered faintly, streaked with veins of crystal that pulsed like slow heartbeats. The deeper he went, the stranger the cave became. Shards of broken glass jutted from the stone, yet reflected no lantern light. Pools of water rippled, though no drop fell. In one corner, a clock face lay cracked and rusted, its hands turning backward. And then he heard them. The wolves, their growls rolled like thunder, low and endless, echoing from every direction. Shadows detached themselves from the walls, coalescing into beasts with eyes like lanterns and teeth like daggers. Their fur was darkness itself, their forms shifting like smoke. Even raised his knife, though it felt pitiful against such creatures. First lunged. He slashed wildly, the blade passing through its smoky body. It reformed instantly, jaws snapping inches from his throat. He stumbled back, heart hammering, and realized brute force would not save him. Think even, he muttered. To himself. Think as a scholar, not a soldier. The wolves circled, their glowing eyes narrowing. With every growl, his lantern's flame wavered, shrinking. Despair clawed at him. Then he remembered Baba Yaga's words. Truth or power? If these beasts were shadows, perhaps they were not real at all, but reflections of his own fear. He forced himself to still his breath, lowering his knife. You are nothing, he said, voice shaking. You are only the shape of my dread. The wolves snarled, closing in. One leaped and passed straight through him like mist. The others wavered, dissolving into smoke, until only silence remained. Even sagged, weak with relief. At the heart of the cave he found it, a pedestal of stone, upon which rested the hourglass. It was no simple trinket. Its frame was carved from bone, etched with runes that writhed when his eyes lingered too long. Within, black sand flowed not downward, but upward, defying gravity. Each grain shimmered like a star, snuffed into darkness. As he reached for it, vision struck him. He saw his ancestors, farmers and hunters, kneeling before the hut on chicken legs, laying their offerings at Baba Yaga's feet. He saw their faces hollow with hunger, their hands trembling as they bartered their lives for a single season of abundance. He saw his own father as a boy, placing a doll of straw upon the altar, his eyes wide with terror. And he saw the future children unborn, their laughter stolen, their dreams devoured. Unless the cycle was broken, the weight of generations pressed upon him. The hourglass was not merely an artifact. It was the chain that bound his people to Baba Yaga. Season after season, year after year, he grasped it. The bone was cold, biting into his flesh like ice. The sand surged upward violently, as though sensing his touch. Time itself seemed to lurch. The cave walls shuddering, fragments of crystal crashing to the ground. The growl of wolves returned, louder, furious. Shadows poured from the cracks, but now Avon clutched the hourglass to his chest, and they recoiled as if scorched. He fled, stumbling through the cave as the walls twisted and warped, the ground shifting beneath his feet. When at last he burst into the night air, gasping, the hourglass pulsed like a living heart in his hands. The forest was silent. The moon hung low and red, as though watching. Even knew he could not keep this hidden. He must return to Baba Yaga, but a thought gnawed at him, more dangerous than hunger, more poisonous than fear. If he gave her the hourglass, the cycle would continue. His people would feast and starve, live and wither, bound to her whim forever. But if he defied her, if he shattered the hourglass, perhaps he could end it. Perhaps He clutched it tighter and began the long walk back. The journey back to the village felt shorter than the trek into the cave, though the weight of the bone hourglass made every step heavier. Its black sand pulsed upward like blood through a vein, each grain whispering, as if with voices of the dead. Even clutched it beneath his cloak, fearful that even the trees might hunger for it if they saw. When he returned, the village was restless. Children whimpered in their mothers' arms. Men stared blankly into the embers of fires that would not warm them. Even the air felt drained, as though the very breath of life had thinned. The headman approached, his back bent like a broken bow. "You've been gone 3 nights," he rasped. "Where did you go, boy? What evil follows you now?" Even raised the hourglass, letting its pale glow spill across the frost. Gasps erupted. Some fell to their knees. Others shrank away in terror. "She sent me to fetch this," Ivan said. His voice carried farther than he expected, as if the relic itself magnified his words. "This is the chain that binds us. With it she has devoured our dreams and bent our harvests to her will." The headman's eyes widened with awe and dread. "Then give it to her, fool. Do as she bids, or we are finished." Murmurs rose among the villagers. Some begged him to obey, others pleaded for freedom. Ivan saw the desperation etched into every face, the terror of hunger that had ruled them for generations. Pavel stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "Brother, if you hand it over, we live another year. If you defy her, we all may die." Ivan closed his eyes, the weight of choice pressing upon him like a millstone. But deep inside, a spark flared. He remembered the visions in the cave. Ancestors bowing, children unborn, shackled by fear. Was another year of bread worth eternal bondage? "No," he whispered. "We will not kneel again." That night, beneath the swollen full moon, Ivan walked into the forest alone, the villagers trailing behind at a fearful distance. Frost crunched beneath his boots, and the hourglass glowed brighter with every step, as though guiding him back to its mistress. The hut waited in a clearing, its chicken legs shifting restlessly, claws gouging furrows in the frozen earth. Smoke curled from its crooked chimney, carrying the scent of ash and bone. The door swung open before he could knock, and Baba Yaga's voice rasped into the night. "Little Crow returns." She stepped into the moonlight, tall and terrible, her staff clutched in her bony hand. Her eyes burned red, reflecting the hourglass's glow. "You have brought me what is mine." Ivan lifted the relic, its sands writhing violently, as though eager to return to her grasp. "I brought it, but it will not be yours." Her smile split her gaunt face, a row of iron teeth gleaming. "Do you think you have choice, child? All who have come before you bent the knee. You are nothing but another in a long chain of crows." Behind him, the villagers gasped, some crying out for him to yield. "Give it to her, Ivan," one shouted. "Better to serve than to die." Baba Yaga spread her arms, her shadow stretching like wings across the clearing. "Hear them, little crow. They beg for life. They fear hunger more than chains. Give me the hourglass, and they will feast." The black sand surged, rattling violently against the glass as though answering her call. Ivan's arms trembled under its weight, his body aching with the pressure of decision. He thought of his mother's tired face, of the hollow eyes of the children, of Pavel's pleading voice. He thought of the cave, of the visions, of generations bowing in fear. And he raised the hourglass high. "No more," he said. With all his strength, he hurled it to the frozen ground. The hourglass shattered, a sound like 1,000 bells ringing, and breaking at once filled the clearing. Black sand erupted upward, spiraling into the sky in a storm of shadows. Time itself seemed to rip open. The moon shuddered, the trees groaned, the earth split, the villagers cried out. some collapsing to their knees. Baba Yaga shrieked, a sound like iron tearing, her form twisting violently. Her hut staggered on, its legs, claws raking the ground as though in agony. "You dare!" she roared, her voice shaking the forest. "You dare break the cycle!" The shadow she had devoured poured from the broken hourglass, dreams, hopes, laughter, fragments of lives stolen across centuries. They swirled through the clearing, rushing against the villagers like a warm wind. Children blinked as light returned to their eyes. Elders straightened their backs as vigor surged through them. But the witch did not yield. Her form swelled, her shadow stretching taller than the trees, her eyes burning like suns. "If I cannot rule you, I will consume you." Spectral wolves burst from the trees, howling, their jaws snapping. The ground heaved as roots tore free, lashing like serpents. The hut charged forward on clawed legs, its door gaping like a maw. Even stood his ground, though terror gnawed at him. He grasped a shard of the shattered hourglass, its edge glowing with the same pale light. The sand within had fused to it, burning with a strange, fierce power. The wolves lunged. He slashed with the shard, and light erupted, scattering them like smoke. Roots lashed at him. He cut them down, sparks flying where bone met wood. "Stand with me," he shouted to the villagers. For a heartbeat, none moved. Then Pavel raised a torch, brandishing it at the wolves. Others followed, wielding pitchforks, axes, even bare hands. Together they surged into the clearing, driving back the shadows with fire and defiance. Baba Yaga shrieked, her form flickering, unraveling. She towered above them, but the more they resisted, the weaker her shadow grew. Ivan raised the shard, high, its glow pulsing with the strength of generations. "You will not bind us again." With a cry, he hurled it into her heart. The shard struck, sinking deep into her chest of shadows. For an instant she froze, her eyes wide with fury and shock. Then her body split, light pouring through the cracks like dawn breaking. The hut collapsed, its legs twitching, then falling still. The wolves dissolved into mist. The shadows screamed as they tore free from her, vanishing into the night sky like smoke carried on the wind. Baba Yaga let out one final shriek that split the heavens, then exploded into a storm of ashdot. The clearing fell silent. The villagers stared in stunned silence. Frost glittered where the sand had fallen, but the air felt lighter, freer. The oppressive weight was gone. Ivan collapsed to his knees, trembling, his breath ragged. Pavel rushed to his side, gripping his shoulders. "It's over," his brother whispered. "You've broken her." But as Ivan lifted his gaze to the sky, his heart sank. The moon, which had glowed fat and full, began to shift. Its light darkened, turning red as blood. And though only minutes had passed since it rose, it began to move faster, climbing unnaturally across the heavens. A chill worse than any frost swept through him. "No," he breathed. The villagers looked. Upward, murmurs of fear rising again. "What is it?" Pavel asked. Ivan's voice was hollow. "The cycle is broken, but time itself is unbound. She may be gone, but her curse lingers." Above them, the moon completed its path across the sky in moments, setting like a sinking stone. And in the east, a new full moon already began to rise. The villagers gasped, clutching one another. Children cried. The world had lost its rhythm. Ivan stood, his legs shaking. "We are free of her, but the cost is ours to bear. We must face what comes without her chains." Some wept, some prayed, some stared blankly at the unnatural heavens. But Ivan felt a strange calm amid the dread. For the first time, the fate of his people was not bound to Baba Yaga. It was bound to their own strength. The forest groaned around them, the trees whispering of cycles undone. of time turned wild dot, and somewhere in the darkness, faint as a dying ember, a voice whispered on the wind, "Little crow." The cycle never ends.